Hi everyone. Today I thought I'd show you a fun hand lettering home decor technique of lettering on a pumpkin. So we're going to try to letter on a pumpkin, a couple of real pumpkins. Now these aren't really big pumpkins, they're just kind of smaller ones that I found that are cute to decorate. You can definitely choose a different size of pumpkin. So let's talk about the real pumpkins and how to choose one for lettering. So you can see by these ones that I did choose, I actually wasn't thinking. When I got home, I started lettering on them, and you can see how bumpy it is. So number one, I would recommend trying to get a pumpkin that doesn't have a lot of deep ridges. So these ones, some sides have ridges and some sides are a little bit straighter. So what I ended up doing is choosing a side that it was smoother and not as deep with the ridges. So that is going to make things a lot easier for you when you decide to write on them. And the other thing I want you to think about is when you choose your pumpkin, you want to set it down, and in general it should be fine how it sits and where you write, but you want to be able to judge how it will show when it is sitting flat on a shelf or in a display or whatever. So you don't want to put the lettering too far down on the pumpkin area. You want to have it high enough so that when it sits, you can see it visibly. Now I know because of the camera angle you can't hear, but some pumpkins are uneven on the bottom, and so if they're uneven, like this little one for example, this side actually sits turned down a bit, so the lettering won't be as visible. So I chose this side right here. Okay, so you choose your pumpkin. What is your next step? Your next step is to sketch what you want to put on the pumpkin on a piece of paper. So I have a piece of paper here, and you can just choose a pencil. I am going to use a marker so it will be easier. And what I did is I just played around. I did my first pumpkin was the word gather. And I just played around with the flourish I had. Now when you have flourishes and your style of lettering, you just want to keep in mind that your pumpkin, if you make your flourish too far down, you might run into trouble. Like I put a really small flourish here, but if you're going to go down here, it probably won't be visible at all. So you want to take that into consideration, and also again, just you're going to play around with your design and figure out how large it should be in general. Like here I have the word boo, and so I will sketch with the pencil. It doesn't have to be a brush pen, it can just be a pencil, and fool around and see which type of style that you like and what looks good, and change things up. You can connect letters or not connect them. You can even print them, and let's say you didn't want to do brush lettering, you could print them and then just figure out basically what your design is. So that's the first step, is to kind of sketch your word that you like. And your next step is to take your pumpkin and you want to write on it, of course. So you're going to sketch on the pumpkin your word. Now, what is great about this idea is that what I did, I'll use the lighter pumpkin, I guess it doesn't matter. What I did is I took one of my water-based pens, this one's a Tombow Brush Pen, and I used the other side of the pen. I didn't use my brush pen to do this. And with the other side, I then wrote the word. Oh, so this is probably the wrong color to use. Let me just grab, do I have my black here? I do have a black. I wouldn't use black just because it can have a little bit of staining, but the reason you can use these markers is you can actually wash them off afterwards. So you can write your word, find out the placement, and it's not a permanent result. You can take this and then wash it off just with a wet paper towel. And that's the other thing you want to make sure I didn't mention. You get your pumpkin, if you're real pumpkin, and bring it home and you wash it. You want it to be wipe it down, make sure it's really clean and doesn't have a lot of dirt on it or debris or anything like that. So this is how you sketch on your pumpkin. You don't have to be afraid of you know, creating marks and with a permanent marker, because ultimately to get a nice dark design you have to use a permanent marker. So let's say I've sketched my design, and I can even do faux calligraphy at this point and fill it in so I know what I'm going to do, and do it like this. Okay, I've got my faux calligraphy done. And now I'm going to pick a permanent pen. So when I first did this technique, I actually grabbed a Sharpie permanent pen and worked on it. And what I found is that it worked to a certain extent. So you can definitely use this permanent pen, the Sharpie. But the one thing I want to mention is that mine seemed to dry out as I was working with it, and I didn't get great coverage. So I decided to try out some different permanent pens that I do have, and that you can use paint pens also. And the one permanent pen I had a lot of success with was my Marvy Plume pen, and this is an alcohol-based ink. So this would be similar to many of the alcohol-based ink pens out there. This is a brush pen. They don't have to be brush pens. There are, the Copic is another example. I also have a chameleon pen that works nicely. So I use this Marvy, and I really liked the coverage. So what you would do then is you would set your pumpkin and hold it firmly in place on, your table, your surface, and just make sure your hand is resting so you don't move, and take your time. So I'm going to be rotating my pumpkin any way I want just to get coverage, and I'm going to, put down my color, and like you can see, and I can fill it in. But the other thing to do is to actually, fix it and fill in little parts of it with a fine tip. Now I did find this Marvy brush tip a little bit too thick to work with in some of the finer lines, but I want you to take a close look at that nice, bold, beautiful line. It's very good coverage, it's opaque, it's shiny, and it dried shiny as well. So I'm going to continue with this bee. And again, this is not brush lettering, it's more like hand lettering, and you're just drawing and following your lines. You don't have to worry about pressure and stuff. If you're very skilled with brush lettering, you can see how I filled that in. You can definitely use your brush pen and use pressure and release like this, but on a curved surface, it's going to be very wobbly. So I in general, I'm just going to probably use the tip of it and then fill in the rest. I mean, you can experiment with what you want to do. The other way to actually test out your pen and to see if it is going to work is you can use the bottom of the pumpkin. So let's say you have a Sharpie and you say, I have this really juicy Sharpie. I want to see how it works. Well, then you can just write on the bottom and see what you think of it. And you can see that this Sharpie is working quite nicely. Like I said, I just found I wasn't getting good coverage, and as I was working it was drying out, but it might have been that Sharpie. Okay, so that is a good place to test your pen, is on the bottom there. The other thing, the other Sharpie I have here, I couldn't find my black one, but I do have this brush tip one, and so don't worry too much about having a brush pen to work on the pumpkin, because I want to emphasize that it is challenging to do brush lettering and calligraphy on a pumpkin. And so if you're not feeling confident, then just do faux calligraphy or, simple script or printing. It doesn't matter. So that is the purple right there. Okay, so back to this. I am not going to do the whole word. I will fast forward it, and then you can watch that, and then I'll show how I added some accents to it. After I finished my lettering with the black, I decided to make it pop, so I added some white paint pen. So I have a Sharpie white paint pen. This is the extra fine point. It is the water-based pen. There are also oil-based pens, but I use the water-based pen. So actually I could probably go in here and just use a wet cloth and wipe this off afterwards. If it didn't work out, I could wet it, and it's water based, so it would wipe off with water. So make sure when you're using your paint pen, you give it a really good shake. I shook it a lot more before I was filming, and then I actually give it kind of one pump. I might do a little bit of a trial draw with it, and then I would hold my pumpkin the same way and just very slowly, without moving my pumpkin and just moving my hand, I would draw in these highlight lines. It's actually a shadow, but I guess it's a white shadow, which is odd. So I went on the right edge. You could outline all of your letters. I just went on the right edge of all of these strokes. Do you see that right edge? That's typically how drop shadows work. You can go on the left edge. You can actually mix things up and probably make them as thick or as thin as you like. And I just kept them nice and thin like that. So that's how you add the white for a little bit of a pop. Now let's take a look at embossing pumpkins. Along with using permanent markers, and like I said, there's many different brands of permanent markers and there's different paint pens. You can also use embossing ink and embossing powder to create a really fun shiny effect, or use any color of embossing powder to create an effect on a pumpkin. So let's try something like this. It's gold embossing powder, and what do you need is you need an embossing pen, which I have right here. I have three kinds. I have a Versamarker by Tsukineko. It has a brush tip and a bullet tip. I have the bullet tip and brush tip of Perfect Medium embossing pens by Ranger. These also come in black, which is really handy because these embossing ink pens in general are clear ink and they're really hard to see on a surface. And then I have this set of Zig emboss pens which also has clear ink, and these have different tips, which is really cool. There's brush tips and bullet tips and chisel. So I'm going to use my Versamarker brush tip, and I will write the word boo again on this side. So the same technique applies. You want to hold your pumpkin on the side without moving it, and you can definitely sketch again with your water-based pen. Remember, when you sketch it, you can wipe it off if it doesn't work out. So let's actually do that. And maybe we should write a different word. Let's try the word fall. See how that goes. And this lettering on a pumpkin doesn't have to be brush script. It can be just plain script as well. So whatever you like to do. Now I'm going to go over this with my Versamarker, which is this clear ink. So probably it'll just look like it's smudged, and that's it. And I'm going to make this wider. So you can use a bullet tip as well, and bullet tips are probably a little bit more common because you have more control and you can do faux calligraphy. But I am going to try this, and I did it last time with my brush tip and it seemed to work. See what happens this time. Of course, when you go on and make a video, usually bad things happen when you're on camera. Okay, I am doing pressure and release with my brush lettering, but you don't have to, you can just print. Okay, the next step is use embossing powder. You can use any color. Black is popular, there's silver, any color of the rainbow. I have this very pretty metallic gold by Colorbox, Clearsnap. It is called Gold Sparkle. So some embossing powders don't have sparkle and some do. So what you do is we'll pour this on and hopefully it'll stick. in all the right places. Embossing ink is sticky and long, slow drying. So that's why when you're embossing, you have some time to make it. Now I'm tapping it so the extra falls off. So that's pretty good. Now take a look and you can see that there on the pumpkin, there is a lot of debris left of the glitter, and that is because it's just sticking with static. So what you want to do in this case is you'll then take some time to very carefully remove that extra glitter. Now I'm not going to remove all of it, but I will remove some of it, because I don't mind these sparkles around. I just want those letters to be quite clear, so I'll just make sure I go quite close to those letter strokes and remove that excess glitter. When you work with paper and embossing powder, you can use a dryer sheet to wipe your paper, and I thought about trying it with this pumpkin, and the dryer sheet will stop the eliminate the static of the embossing powder staying on spots that you don't want it. But I don't have a dryer sheet, so just keep that in mind if you are doing this. So you can see how I'm just removing that excess sparkles that bother me away. And I see that I have too tight of a connection with the A and the L, so I am going to try to go in between there. See how I'm removing some of that, creating that space inside there? That's a little bit better. So you can actually fix up some of your shapes, but you want to be careful because too much fixing can be a problem as well. There. That looks pretty. Okay, so put away your powder. I have it on a sheet here. I am going to dump it back into this pot, this little jar. Set that aside, close the jar. You do not want to heat your embossing powder close by. And then I have below here is a silicone mat. It is heat resistant. I'm putting links for all of this in the comments below. So, and I have my heat gun. This is a Marvy Uchida heat gun. There's many on the market, and I will put links for those as well. So let's turn this on, and I will probably fast forward it because the noise is annoying. So heat embossing is very, very hot. And you can what you're basically doing is melting embossing powder. You can see it melts into a kind of liquid gold, and it's beautiful and sparkly. So like I said, there are very many different brands out in the market. So you want to make sure, if you want sparkle, look for that glitter. But I think the effect is really pretty. Now this is going to be quite hot, so you want to let it cool off, and the pumpkin itself stays hot, so this is movable. You know, if you do touch it, it's going to stick to you and possibly burn you. But what I wanted to show you is on the other side, I ended up taking my permanent markers. So whether it's a Sharpie or I had that Marvy pen, I think what I did with this one is I used my chameleon alcohol ink pen, and it has a small tip and a brush tip, and I used the brush tip and I just created those shadows. So you can do the shadow or an outline. Let's see if this is cool enough for me to do that. Might be. So I'll just zoom in and just show you a little bit of, again, this permanent pen, and it's warm, then I'm going to mess this up, but at least you'll have an idea of what I'm doing. So you could do this, circle around it in white or another color and create your shadows or outline effects. I mean, the sky's the limit, but it's nice because the embossing edge is raised, and so you end up having almost a little bit of a line to follow as you move around. There, I think that's really pretty. So I hope you are able to take some real pumpkins and letter on them and have some fun. And the next part, I'm going to talk about lettering on plastic pumpkins. I have two samples of plastic pumpkins, this big black one that I bought at a craft store, and this tiny one. Now I have this tiny one from years ago, and what is really great about getting these tiny plastic pumpkins is you can use them for table settings and write on them, write something different every year, because if you use a water-based pen, then you can wipe it off with water. So for example, I'm going to take this Tombow pen and I can just write on script. I can write somebody's name on here. So let's write, and you can do real calligraphy or faux calligraphy or just a simple script, and then you can erase it and then keep this for the next year in case you need different people's names on it. So if you're doing faux calligraphy, you can then just fill in whatever you want to fill in and create a really pretty have a really pretty effect. Now you can do this the same way on a big pumpkin. So I only have the black big pumpkin to show you. So you can do something like this. Then you can erase it with the water. You want to make sure this is dry actually before you do something else. The other thing you can use is you can use a water-based white paint pen. There's different brands. I like Posca and Sharpie, so you could do the same thing. Let's write the word autumn. So you can see this white pen as a real wow factor. It's very, very nice. I don't know why I'm holding this up in my hand. It's just more comfortable when I film. But what you will do is you can put this into your, hold it onto your table. Now I'm kind of rushing, so it's not the best, but you can see the effect is really quite nice. So you could add a faux calligraphy. I'm using a fine tip pen. So if you're skilled, you can do the faux calligraphy thing and fill it in, or just leave it like that. Then what you can do is you can use your wet towel and you can just take it off when you're finished with it, or you're done for this year. So you can do this on a whole big pumpkin. I have a few tips when working with plastic black pumpkins. I did do some trial and error on the bottom of the pumpkin with some different pens. So this is a silver Marvy Uchida silver paint pen, the DecoColor pen. It has a beautiful shine and it comes in different sizes and tips. So I have this large DecoColor chisel tip, and then I also have the bullet tip, which is much smaller. So I used the bullet tip on here to try it out, and I also used a Sharpie paint pen, which wiped off very easily. So then I went on to my pumpkin and I traced with my Sharpie paint pen I started to letter, thinking that this is water-based and I can erase it. So on the bottom it erased, but when I came here and I wrote the word trick and I erased it with water, or wiped it off with water, it didn't wipe off. So I just want to caution you that I had that experience. So maybe the better choice would be to take a pencil, just a regular pencil, and lightly write out. Now you're not going to see much of it, but you can at least sketch lightly and it won't show up to, that much when you are lettering on top of it. You can also very gently erase the lines. It depends on the finish of your pumpkin. So the color black plastic is a little bit trickier to work with. But I'll just show you how I did actually this freehand, and if you need more guidance, then definitely trace it out with your pencil. So similar to the other pumpkins, you want to find the side that has the least bumps. It depends on the pumpkin. I made the mistake actually. I was writing on this one, and if you can see on the E, there is this bump. And this is part of the plastic pumpkin that wasn't smooth that I didn't notice. So I'm kind of disappointed about that. So I would like to tell you, to caution you, that when you are checking the side of a pumpkin to write, you want to avoid any lumps and imperfections. So I'll just show you how I use these pens. You want to shake them up. When you get a new pen, here's the bullet tip, and it's new. It's going to be white, and what you have to do is, the instructions are on the side. You have to shake it really well with the cap on, and then you are going to depress it onto a piece of paper or with your fingertip, and basically pump it until the ink starts to flow down. And I don't pump, I just do it a few times and I wait, and eventually you will see the ink coming down into place. So I just wanted to tell you a couple of things about doing this. Now, when I did this side, I just shook this once and depressed it until it was really, the tip was filled with paint, and I did this entire lettering piece without stopping and reshaking. But if you do have to stop and shake and then depress it, I'll do it off camera. You'll depress it once, pump it once. Don't pump it a lot, because you'll get a really kind of a messy nib. All right, so to do this, again, you're going to judge what is visible. Do not write on the bottom of the pumpkin. Near the bottom, it won't be that visible. So kind of up here. And I did the trick or treat, and because it's around kind of a curved surface, I did decide to curve my letters in this hand lettering style. So I kept my chisel flat and I just moved it like this. Now you can see that's not completely even, so you can go back and kind of even it out. And this is where the smaller tip comes in handy, that you can do that. So I'm going to go across the top. Now this is wet, you want to be careful, and then there's this bump, right? So I'm going to be just careful with the bump and cross that, and then go across slowly. And you can see, I think, how shiny it is. It's super shiny. I'm going to put my serifs on. You can do any lettering style you like, or you can do faux calligraphy. I'm going to draw that line from top to bottom that I have, that second line. That's thinner. Just holding my pumpkin still, and I'm rotating, moving my whole hand there. And then I'm going to come across the bottom, and there's the T for the word trick. So I'm not going to obviously letter the whole alphabet, the whole piece, all the words, but I wanted to mention a good way to touch up mistakes. So let's say I had made a mistake and I had a mark like that. Well, that's a little bit too much of a mistake. So when it was all dry, what I would do is I would take another permanent marker, and a black one, and I had the Marvy Plume that I was using earlier, and I would just cover it up. You could also do that, with another permanent marker, a Sharpie. But the coverage with this Plume is really, really nice. Now, because that's wet, I'm not sure it's going to work. So I'm going to flip this over and show you how you can fix up something on this side. So let me find something I don't like. Okay, there's a ridge there. I'm not going to work with a ridge. Let's work on this C part. So let's say I didn't like the way this C serif was. I would just go over it with the black and it would disappear. Now this isn't for a huge, it's not very visible. And then I will fix it up with my white paint pen, but let it dry completely before you do any fixing. And then you can do little touch-ups. Like you can, if you have a bump where you don't like a bump, or you have a curve that needs to be a nicer curve, you can go in with a black permanent pen. It almost works like an eraser and cover that up. Once again, you want to limit this type of cover up because it won't be perfect. It will just be a little bit of an improvement, and sometimes it will be kind of visible. So this is just for small touch-ups, but you can see how it works nicely. So the scary thing, yes, about a paint pen is that it is permanent, but there are ways you can fix things up when you're working with this black background. So I'm going to actually take this pen and then try to redraw that line. There. Okay, so that is all about pumpkins, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.